Relief today, though, for Canadians caught up in the confusion over emergency benefit payments. Some of them won't have to pay it back. Late last year, about 441,000 Canadians received letters saying the government needed more information to make sure they actually qualified to receive the CERB. Many of those contacted worried they would have to pay back thousands to the Canada Revenue Agency. Among those contacted were self-employed Canadians who were facing CRA bills up to $14,000. CRA agents had told them their eligibility was based on gross income, but it was actually based on net income. Now the government says people who access the CERB based on their gross income won't be forced to repay it, as long as they meet the other qualifying requirements. For more, we've reached Carla Qualtrough. She's the Minister of Employment, with us from Delta, British Columbia. Hi, Minister Qualtrough. Good to see you as always. Thanks for making the time.
Nice to see you too.
Minister, the last two times we spoke to you on this program, you said, and this is in reference to people who had applied for CERB because the rules at the time said gross, not net income, that there were no plans to forgive money owed under those circumstances. We're certainly not in a position to forgive CERB debt right now, was exactly what you said. What changed?
Well, a couple things. First of all, at the time, we were not entertaining that, but we subsequently dug in. We heard from many Canadians who found themselves in this position. And so we kind of rolled up our sleeves and took the time and came up with what we consider to be a pretty fair and pretty reasonable solution. So, yeah, I mean, we course corrected. At the time, we weren't considering it, and subsequently we have, and that's what we announced today.
So the difference is only that people came forward to you to say that they had been affected by this, because the gist of it was the same a few months ago when we originally talked to you, right? They had been given the wrong information. The question posed to you was, if they were given the wrong information, why should they have to repay?
And absolutely. So we, at the time, we're still looking into the extent of the miscommunication. I had not had conversations with the Prime Minister or Cabinet about possible options to move forward on it. And so I didn't think I was in the position to say that I could do anything at the time. And, you know, subsequent to that, the Prime Minister went out and said nothing's off the table. I went out and kind of took a step back and said nothing's off the table. And here we find ourselves now, having worked through a solution that I think is probably the best that we could come up with.
What was the extent, to your knowledge, what is the extent of the information, the misinformation that was given? I know it was a 3-week period. That's what my colleague Catherine Cullen had been reporting. Are you sure that no bad information or wrong information was given out outside of that period?
Well, what actually happened was we gave different information on different platforms. So we gave inconsistent messaging for a period of about 3 weeks. And now that we understand the extent of that, we felt the most fair thing to do was, because people could have saw that information and applied for CERB 2 months later. So we couldn't really put bookends around in terms of timing for people who applied within a certain amount of time of that 3 weeks, because quite frankly, they could have got advice from a tax lawyer a month later who was relying on that information. So it seemed, again, the fairest thing was to say anybody who used gross income is eligible, will not be forced to make their repayments, is probably a better way to put it.
And do you have any sense of the scope, the number of people who might?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, you did ask that. I apologize.
Okay.
Yeah, well, it's a bit hard to come up with an exact number, partially because, we sent out those 440,000 letters, and a subgroup of those Canadians would fall into this particular circumstance. But many people still haven't filed their 2019, 2020 taxes. So we actually don't know whether it's net or gross, what a lot of people's income is. So it's still a little premature to come up with a number. I'd be more comfortable if I didn't have to give one right now. But, it's enough that it's really important that we took this step to be fair.
What about people who took the CRA at its word, who said, recipients should repay before December 31st to avoid, confusion during tax season? The Prime Minister, I remember in an interview before Christmas, said don't worry, but again, did not say that forgiveness was forthcoming. I know people are going to get their money back, but do you regret not acting on it sooner for the stress that it caused Canadians who were already under a lot of stress during this pandemic?
Well, absolutely. Anytime something that I do or say causes anybody stress, I regret that but at the time we were still gathering information. We think we've taken the time necessary to get this right, because there's a lot of complexities here. And, you've just identified one. We have to make sure we repay the people who feeling that they were now ineligible based on their gross repaid the money. We want to get those payments back to people as soon as possible. We're aware that there are other people who didn't apply for CERB based on gross, and so we wanted to understand, the impact on those people. And at the end of the day, we just think the best way forward is to address the very specific issue of people who received improper information, relying on that information applied, and we just don't think it's fair to make them repay.
I just want to make sure that I'm clear, and I'm not trying to berate the issue, but just on why you decided that now is okay to pursue this path versus a few months ago. I take your point on trying to figure out exactly how many people it affected, but does that even really matter? I mean, if it was wrong, it was wrong. It was wrong in the middle of December. It's wrong in the middle of February. And did it have anything to do with the threat of a lawsuit?
No, what I'd say is it was never not on the table, but it was on a list of issues that we have to address, that we're always working to kind of course correct, make sure that people, recently we announced, for example, that we are waiving the 1 week waiting period for EI. That was another issue that had been brought to my attention, that CRB recipients didn't have to wait a week to, and EI did. So that felt a little unfair. So we fixed that. But this was never off the table. We just hadn't made a decision until quite recently, actually.
Okay, and just on the broader issue, the other big announcement on deferring people who need to repay CERB but are allowed to defer now for a year. You had mentioned, I listened to your press conference, there were 441,000 letters sent out, and sometimes it's characterized as all those people are weren't eligible to receive CERB. Yes. I think what you said is that that's not the case, that actually all those people got a letter saying we don't have all the information we need to make sure that you do qualify. What do you know now about the scope of, how many people in this country do you think actually didn't qualify for CERB? Do you know?
Yeah, a good question, and I can't give you an answer. I don't know. No, right. Going into the 2020 tax season, we're just getting people filing their 2020 taxes. So again, with CERB, you could have used your income from 2019 or 2020 or a combination of a 12-month period. So we're still kind of churning through. But you're absolutely correct that those letters didn't determine eligibility or ineligibility. That was, seeking information to see if people could provide enough information to deem them eligible and basically allow them to breathe a little easier going into the tax season.
Do you have any sense that, I know maybe not of the whole number, but how many people have then come back and said, here's the information, we actually do qualify? I'm just trying to get a sense for people who are watching, is it 500,000 Canadians who have to pay back, or we don't know?
Well, no, we know that it's under 500,000 because there was only 40,000 letters sent writ large. A lot of those people will have filed their taxes. I don't have the breakdown. That's a CRA question. I don't have that information at my fingertips. But what I'm encouraging people to do is obviously file their taxes so we can see what their status is and go from there.
Okay, Minister, and before I let you go, just one more topic. I wanted to ask you about something, while acknowledging that there are genuine questions on this issue for the provincial government in Ontario around the sick leave benefit that the federal government is offering. There are a lot of concerns, especially, for example, in the Peel region, about the number of workers who are going to work because even with symptoms, because they feel like they can't take those sick days. The province, when we've asked them about whether they're going to supplement the federal sick leave benefit or add to it or find a way to deal with this, say that they don't want to double up on the benefit that you've provided, but that there should be improvements to that benefit, and chief among them, that people can receive it sooner. I know that you've said that the majority of people are getting it between 3 and 5 days after they file for it, but that's still not the same as being able to get sick leave when you're actually sick. Are you open to changing the program?
Well, first of all, taking a step back, sick leave has always been a key public health measure for us. It was, you could get the CERB if you were sick or you couldn't work for COVID reasons. And it's the same with our sickness benefits. Some provinces like BC and the Yukon have stepped up to provide additional targeted support. And I would suggest that their work is not duplicative, as some other provinces have suggested. Rather, it's complementary, right? We have a system of a sickness benefit that you can take in 1 week chunks that can go to any worker. If you lose more than 50% of your work week for COVID reasons. So you don't have to have lost the whole week. And that's a really important aspect that we need to get people to be aware of. But, right now, our commitment is for 2 weeks, 2 1-week periods. We wish provinces would step up and follow the example of some of their peers, because we think this is an excellent foundation for sick leave, and there's an opportunity for provinces and territories to build upon it.
And my question is certainly not to alleviate responsibility or defer responsibility from the provinces. But if in the case, for example, of Ontario, they are showing zero willingness to supplement that benefit, is there a role for the federal government? Because it is a big problem, a live problem in certain regions in Ontario.
And there very well may be. And it's not, as I said before, nothing is off the table. We are now, hopefully at the end, veering down in a second wave. We might have a third wave. We are always talking about what additional supports have to be put in place. And again, no decision has been made on the sickness benefit, whether it be an extension or a changing of the program at this point. But we are constantly reviewing these measures and to make sure that they still meet the needs that we're trying to address.
Is there any timeline that you're looking at? And I ask genuinely because of the time crunch that those regions are facing, right? Like I said, it's a live problem that we've had public health officials tell us about daily.
Well, I think, we're looking at, weeks, obviously, but it's really, we haven't really finalized any decision on a path forward. But, once again, all I can say is that we remain committed to supporting Canadian workers. Sick leave has been a foundation piece to our public health response. And we're going to make sure that we're continue to be there for workers in particular, because they're making really brave choices and we need to be there for them.
All right. Thank you so much, Minister Qualtrough. Appreciate your time as always.
Thanks, Vashi.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.